In the winter of 1878, the winds over the New Mexico territory howled like starving wolves. Dust rolled through the small settlement of Calico Crossing, a cluster of shacks and trading posts hugging the dry bones of the desert. The sign outside the general store creaked in the wind, and a new piece of wood had been nailed below it, a crude advertisement written in black paint that drew every eye that passed. It was the work of Milton Briggs, the merchant. A man who traded in everything: guns, cattle, liquor, and sometimes people. He had dragged the sign out that morning, grinning, as if proud of his genius in business. The letters, uneven and harsh, announced an offer to draw ranchers from miles around. It was meant as a joke, he told anyone who frowned at it. But the laughter it drew from his drinking companions said more about the men than the words on the board. Behind the store, in the shadow of a broken corral, stood a woman. Her wrists were tied with a strip of rawhide, though her eyes, dark, steady, unbroken, gave no sign of surrender. Her name was Nayland. She was Apache, born among the Red Cliffs far to the south. She had been taken months earlier, after soldiers raided her camp, and sold twice before ending up here. Milton Briggs called her a worker. He said she could clean, cook, mend, or ride as well as any man. To him, she was part of his inventory. But to herself, Nayland was still a daughter, still a warrior's blood. That afternoon, a rancher named Eli Tanner rode into Calico Crossing. His coat was patched, his horse lean, and his eyes tired. He was not a cruel man, but he was hard, and hard men rarely asked what lay beneath the surface of things. He came for cattle. Briggs had sent word that he had 3 fine heifers to sell. When Eli dismounted, he saw the sign and frowned. "You gone and lost your senses, Milton?" Briggs laughed, slapping his knee. "Just a bit of fun, Eli. Men around here like a bargain, you know." Eli looked toward the woman by the corral. She was motionless, the wind tugging at the torn fringe of her dress. "That your idea of a joke?" Briggs grinned wider. "She's part of the deal. Figure you could use help out there on your spread. Don't cost extra." Eli's jaw tightened. "You can't sell people." Briggs shrugged. "Ain't selling. Call it a transfer. Government won't care, ain't nobody claiming her. You take her off my hands, I take a few dollars off the price of the cows. Everyone wins." Eli wanted to argue, but he also wanted the cattle. His ranch was dying, his wife buried the year before, and he had no one left to help. He told himself it was mercy that if he took the woman, at least she'd be fed. He signed the paper. Briggs laughed again, counting his coins. When Eli cut Nayland's bindings, she didn't move at first. Her eyes met his, and for a long moment, he saw something there: pride, fire, contempt. Not fear. Finally she stepped toward his horse without being told. The road to the Tanner Ranch stretched 50 miles through dry scrub and red stone. Eli rode ahead, the woman behind him on a borrowed mule. The silence between them grew thick. At sundown, they stopped by a creek. Eli built a small fire, offered her a tin cup of water. She didn't take it. "You thirsty?" he asked. She stared at him, then said in slow English, "You buy me?" He hesitated. "I took you away from that man." She looked toward the horizon, then back to him. "Same thing." He had no answer. The fire crackled between them. The days that followed settled into a tense rhythm. Nayland worked mending fences, tending the cattle, cooking when she wished. Eli didn't order her. He didn't have the heart. But he didn't know how to speak to her either. He tried once. "You got family somewhere?" She didn't look up from the bucket she was filling. "All gone." "How'd you end up?" He stopped. The question felt too cruel to finish. That night he dreamed of his wife, Clara, pale and coughing in their cabin, and woke before dawn to the sound of coyotes. He went outside and saw Nayland sitting by the corral, watching the stars. She looked carved from the same earth that surrounded them, silent, enduring. Weeks passed. The cattle fattened. The ranch began to feel alive again. Nayland fixed the roof, tamed 2 horses, and knew the land better than Eli ever had. She never smiled, but sometimes when the wind rose, she would close her eyes as if listening to a voice only she could hear. One evening, a group of riders appeared from the north, 3 men from the fort, wearing dusty uniforms. The leader, a sergeant, dismounted and saluted Eli lazily. "We're looking for an Apache woman," he said. "Escaped from a trader in Calico Crossing. You seen anyone?" Eli's pulse jumped. "No one but me out here." The sergeant squinted. "You sure? Fella in town said you bought 3 cows and a working girl. Sounds mighty similar." Eli's hand twitched near his rifle. "You calling me a liar?" The soldier grinned. "Just doing my job." He stepped toward the barn. "Mind if we look around?" Before Eli could answer, Naylin appeared from behind the shed. She stood tall, the setting sun turning her face to bronze. "I am here," she said. The sergeant smirked. "There you are. Come along. Now, back to town." Eli stepped between them. "She's free here." The sergeant laughed. "Free? Ain't no such thing for her kind. Orders are to return any hostiles to custody. You interfere, you'll regret it." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Naylin spoke softly, in her own tongue. Eli didn't understand the words, but he felt their weight. She turned and walked toward the open land behind the corral. The sergeant barked, "Stop her." But before he could reach for his gun, Eli swung the butt of his rifle into his stomach. The man folded with a gasp. The other soldiers drew their pistols, but Naylin had already vanished into the gathering dusk, swift and silent as smoke. A shot cracked. Dust leapt near her feet, then she was gone behind the rocks. The soldiers cursed and gave chase, but the desert swallowed her. When they returned empty-handed, the sergeant's eyes burned with fury. "You'll answer for this, Tanner. Aiding an escapee. She was never yours," Eli said. "They left at dawn, dragging one of the cows as compensation." For weeks afterward, Eli expected soldiers to return. None did. He went about his chores, always glancing toward the distant mesas. Sometimes at night, he thought he heard faint singing carried on the wind. Months later, spring came. Grass returned, and with it, the sound of hooves on the ridge. Eli looked up from the corral and saw a figure on horseback. For a moment he thought it a dream, but then she dismounted Naylin, wearing a deerskin cloak, her hair braided with beads. She approached slowly. "They not come back?" she asked. "No." She nodded. "Good." He looked at her hands, scarred, strong. "Where did you go?" "Home," she said. "What is left of it?" He didn't ask more. She reached into her pouch and drew out a small carved figure of a horse, made of stone. She placed it on the fence post between them. "For you," she said. He took it carefully. "Why? You helped," she said simply. "Not all men help." He looked at her then, really looked, the set of her shoulders, the quiet defiance that hadn't dimmed. "I didn't help enough." She shook her head. "You let me go. That is enough." They stood in silence for a while. The desert stretched endless around them, full of ghosts and sunlight. Finally, she turned to mount her horse. "Where will you go?" he asked. "North," she said. "There are still people there. We make a new place." He wanted to say something, anything to keep her a moment longer, but words failed. She looked back once, eyes soft now, not cold. "The sign in the town," she said quietly. "It said I was free for nothing. But I am not nothing." He nodded, throat tight. "No, you never were." She smiled, a small, fleeting curve of her lips, and rode away into the red dust. That night, Eli burned the paper Briggs had made him sign. The flames caught fast, curling the ink into ash. He saddled his horse at dawn and rode to Calico Crossing. The sign was still there, hanging crooked over the general store, the letters faded by sand. Without a word, he pried it loose, carried it to the edge of town, and buried it beneath the desert stones. Years passed. The settlement grew, the old trader died, and no one remembered the sign. But travelers spoke sometimes of a band of Apache families living far to the north, raising horses, keeping to themselves. Among them, they said, was a woman who had once walked through fire and come out whole.